Good day, Met 330 students. In this example, we're going to walk through an example that reads in a two-dimensional array in tabular format and reads in this data into two different arrays, one 2D array and one 1D array. And so again, to start, we have to first declare all of our variables and arrays. And so we use implicit equal none to make sure we define all of our variables. Then we're going to have some integer variables, I, j, I station, and I time. I'm going to set up a parameter statement with I station equal to 6, I time equals to 5. Why those? We have 5 different times and 6 different stations that we're going to read in. Then we're going to read in an integer array, a 1D array called time, that has 5 addresses according to I time. And then we're going to do a 2D array, a real array of temperatures, that have number of rows I time and number of columns I station. Okay. Then we have to open our file for reading, and we're going to give it the file handle 15. We're reading in a file called temps.txt, which is what is exemplified down here. You could imagine that this is in a file on your system. Status unknown. This initial read statement is reading the first row. Remember that every time we hit a read statement, we read a new row. But we've got no variable behind it. So what we're essentially doing here is we're reading this line, but throwing it right away. So that we're basically ignoring it. And we've not stored it anywhere within our file. That's because that information's a header, which is really good for a table, but we don't need to store that within our system, or within any one of our arrays particularly. So we've read that, and now we've moved on to our nested do loop. And our nested do loop here is having an outer do loop that's looping over time, and an implied do loop that's looping over our stations. And so initially I is going to equal 1, and j is going to equal 1. And so we're going to hit our first read statement, which will start then reading the second line. And then the first thing it's going to do is read the first value, time. And I equals 1 initially, so it's going to store in time I equals 1, time 1 equals 900. That integer value for time, say in UTC. Then it's going to move on to the inner do loop, which is an implied do loop, and read across. And so again, initially I is still equal to 1. Initially j equals 1, and so we're going to store in temp 11 the value 85, since 85 is that first value that we're reading now. And then we read across to 86 and store it in 1, 2. Then we'll store 83 in 1, 3, 84 in 1, 4, 88 in 1, 5, and 89 in 1, 6. And then technically this implied do loop is going to iterate to j equals 7, which we know is no longer true. It's going to get out of this implied do loop, move on with our program, we hit the end do, and so then we're going to iterate on our outer do loop to then I equals 2. I equals 2, we hit the read statement for a third time, we move down to the third row, so we move down a line. Initially I equals 2, and we put into time address 2, 1200 for 12 UTC, and then use our implied do loop to again read across, but now storing in our second row our 5 columns, or 6 columns rather, of data. 88, then 90, then 89, then 91, then 92, then 93 in address 2, 6. Again, j equals 7, so continue with the outer do loop. Now I equals 3. Move down, 1500 stores in time 3. And then now we're storing in row 3, column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5, and column 6. And so we do this same thing now as we go through and reading in our file. This is what's actually going on when your program is running to read a file. So now we're reading this last time with loop I equals 5, store address 5 in time, 2100, and then in 5.1 for temperature, 83, 5.2, 85, 5.3, 81, 5485, 5589, and 5690. And then we get to 7 and out of that loop, and then we iterate to 6 on our outer do loop, which is also false. So then we continue on with our program. We've now finished reading our file and move on to processing our file. At this point, this is where we may do some calculations with things, finding the average by station, for example, or other things that we could do. But right now, then, we're just going to go on to this second one and print out some values. And so basically, now we're just printing out what we read in. With this one do loop, we're going to print out our time, and then below it, the temperatures at that time for all of our different stations. Right? So basically here, this I is going to be the row, comma, colon means all. So we're going to print all of our stations. If we just wanted to print those from ORD, we would say TMPF I, comma, 1, and that would print out just the values for ORD. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching.